Welcome, everyone, to my podcast show, Nichel Anderson Short Stories and Beyond. I'm your host for this week. I will focus on my director's clip, notes, and it will focus on episode 30 and episode 31, where I'm focusing on returning back to season 2. So we're going to look at that today. Thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your support. And just to recap for those, or just to provide some info for those that just joining me, this is a premium podcast. So this is based on my book, Mitzrayim, that I turned it into a theatrical production, MOLIAE. And MOLIAE stands for Moments of Love in Ancient Egypt. And it focuses on short stories that I started last year about the main characters from the book, which is Princess Amina, her family, and then her friends, and then the kings. And of course, we have these other characters too, the Orions, the tribal leaders, and so forth, and other people from Pleiadians and into that regard, into the storyline. Right now, the production of MOLIAE is currently in the prep phase to return back for the third time to stage. It will be entitled The Prestige Return of MOLIAE Stage Play. It's more of a celebration because it's been over 20 years since I wrote the book Mitzrayim. That started the seed for me to be a writer, and it progressed to other opportunities that I got. So at any rate, this particular podcast is a premium membership in the sense that you get the clip snippets that I release most of the time during my season. And my season starts in September and it ends in May of the following year. So this season, of course, I'm going to release mostly clip snippets. And you get part of the short story. To get the full short story, you have to become a member, a Patron member. You can get that link in the description to my Patreon page. You also get rewards with that. So just click that link and it'll tell you more information. So you will hear me fade off into or cut off the short story that I'm sharing with you. And to get the access to be a Patron member, you'll get that full access of what happened next, what happened in the full short story that's being released. So I will initially we'll call it a clip snippet of the short story. Now I do release the full short stories as well during the year. It's periodically, but for the most of the year, they are clip snippets of the full short, but still give you enough so you can follow along and get an idea. You won't know everything and what happened or what nuggets that I released or what secrets that I revealed for the most part, but you do get enough to be able to hopefully really continue to follow this story of MOLIAE. I will also do other short stories. That's why the title of the podcast is And Beyond. Like this summer, I released a short story. I will release that short story again. That was entitled Mahogany. It was for my Harlem Renaissance column that I was an editor at Sweet 101 years ago. And I will return that back this year. I haven't decided when, but it will return back from that part 2 that I will release. And I will release and do other short stories with different timelines of history. But for right now, for most of these podcast releases that I do, it's on MOLIAE. MOLIAE is my heart. Mitzrayim is my heart. So some highlights from last week. The highlights for this week, I'm focused on episode 30, episode 31, and to take a look at that. Episode 30 was entitled When One Falls, There's Another to Behold. That was released on my return back to season 2 on September the 3rd. And then I'm going to talk about episode 31. That was released on September the 10th, entitled In the Sudan, Many Secrets Went Deep to the Afar, of old. So I'm going to focus on that. That's the highlight for today episode. Here for this week. Now for last week, it was episode 36 and it was entitled Of the Orion Skies, There's Always Others. That's where I took you deep into Orion. I still haven't revealed all the historical facts on the Orions and clarify or come to conclusion. I'm still kind of keeping that to the side right now, but you will in the future, because we got to find out, and that's what I mentioned earlier with my return back. You got to find out the linkage to Kishi. Kishi was one of the main players when Princess Amina was on the scene. Princess Amina timeline is the book of Mitzrayim. It was through her eyes that she was sharing her experience, right? And Kishi was on the scene. He had 2 other Orions with him. But this right here in this timeline in the podcast, which is before the time of Princess Amina, we haven't really got to find out where did Kishi come in, who is he linked to. And I'm just getting the feeling is each time I sit down and it comes through, it's going to be one of these Orions. I don't know who. I don't know if it was Echo or Lanko or Netu or maybe somebody that they know. I don't know, but it's coming real soon. Because remember, again, like I said, Lanko came through first in episode 1. So in this episode last week, entitled Of the Orion Skies, There's Always Others, we're into this position of seeing Hanee. Hanee was introduced as the head leader that was over Echo. And Lanko was the one to report back of the fall of Echo. And now in this episode, last week, episode 36, Hanee is the central character. And he takes the full episode, right, leading into the clip off of the story, the short story that was released, the clip that was released. And he's talking to these members that are hidden. You don't know their name. I didn't express that. I just described them. But he let it known about not only Echo Fall, but there are others. And the linkage goes directly to the heart of the Orion, which we would call the government now today. At any rate, so he was putting on notice. He was dressed in very military. Notice how I described, and I kind of put emphasis on that, of his rank. Then we were talking about high stakes politics, high stakes agenda. Okay, when we get to that level and we're dealing with these level of secrecy, because I remember he went to go see the secrecy of the Orion council members. I'm not going to go too deep in that, but just to kind of let you know that's what you got. And something he revealed at the end that was clipped off. You have to become a Patron member to get the rest of that. What he was revealing to them that set up some more nuggets to fall through that was not shared. Okay. And so go and check that episode, our episode last week, episode 36. So let's go ahead and begin now, okay? Let's begin. For this week of my season 2 of 2018-2019 of my podcast show, Nichel Anderson Short Stories and Beyond. For this week will be my director clip notes for episode 30 and 31 for season 2. Okay, that's what started on September the 3rd. So let's get started. Jumping right on to episode 30. And I really like this title that came to me. It came to me during the summer of what my first episode would be. And I knew it had to be the Orions. I just felt inside that I had to focus on them. And just making it the first episode for season 2 give me a good feeling that it's going to come through more of the Orions. We're going to get more into them. All right, mix in with King Milan. Last year was all about King Milan and King Hagar, and I still feel it's going to be about them still. But now the Orions is on the scene. They're going to be battling for some scene time for sure. So this titled "When One Fall, There Was Another to Behold." It was basically to set it up to show it's a change in rank. Something happened. Echo have good ties in the Orion regime. You could tell good ties, good loyalty. That's what I pick up on. And you see that where he's in front of the high rank Orions to those of Akum. Now you notice that I always, when I talk about these different council members, I'm always describing something about that's not council members. They're a different rank. And so this one is those of Akin. Now, who is Akin? What is that? Is that a territory? Is that, I don't know. We don't really know, but you know it's something of secrecy and it's a different level of authority, of knowledge. That's what you got to take away with, and that's what you got to identify who is over who has most power when I'm talking about these high rank Orions and these council members and their title and their group. It's similar to, I guess, what you say in government where they have certain power, certain rank, certain level of influence. So that's where we get to meet Hanee. This is a new character, and that he's really running the show at this level of authority in the high rank Orions to those of Akin. So Lanko was in position to tell them about Echo. He wanted to know. Hanee asked, what is this going on with Echo? Plan that was for Tamat. And Lanko responded. And he said, I'm not sure of what happened, and I'm not sure of other locations that Echo was setting up. So it seems like Echo had certain types of reference. You know what? It's an episode. I believe it was episode 4 or episode 5. But it was where Echo was communicating to them. So he had very high secrecy at a level to communicate to the High Council members in Orion. You have to check that out. I believe it was episode 4 or 5. I will put a description in the back if I change it. But if I don't, just go back and look at the first 7. No, from episode, I would say episode 3 to 7. check those out. And Ek was the main person of authority and was communicating back to the High Council members. So Hanee wanted to know more information, and so he wanted to find out, after he realized that Echo had fallen, that where are the two Napu of Echo reign? And Lanko paused and said, "I'm not sure." Right? He didn't share that information with him. So that's when Hanee did something else. He nodded and he took a cloth and he started writing markings on it. And he looked back up and he said, in the last call to Echo, it was a move to move northern with the tribal leaders. Right? So there he's showing some information that was just between Echo and the High Council members. So Lanko at this moment, that's what the takeaway, he's getting promoted, because they got to have somebody else that they can trust. Okay? And then fast forward, you will hear Hanee at the end. He wants Lanko to deliver this message to someone in the northern mountains and on Tamat, and he wants him to bring Natu before them. So it's already they suspect Natu was up to something. He's got his hands in it. He might wasn't present, like he was on an assignment, but they smell that Natu is somewhat involved in this. Okay? And that's what he told, return back to Tamat, for they do not know you that you still exist after the fall of Rake. Right? Bring the two here. We know he still stands. So that's what Hanee said back to Lanko, and Lanko not in agreement, right, to the leader of Akun, which we're calling Hanee. And Hanee pointed to a rolled up cloth and he spoke, "Give this message to that you hold to tribal leader in the north region, by far the mountains of old. Only he can read the meaning for another day in this war." So they're still going to go at it, Mitzrayim, which builds up the confrontation that King Milan will have to certain people on this side that's against Mitzrayim, and that there's another play that's about to roll out, and Lanko has basically been promoted, and he brings Natu. Get this, if he brings Natu back to them, who knows what's going to happen to Natu, but Lanko will be in position of Echo, because remember, Lanko was here and there, but Lanko was close to Echo, and Echo sided with Lanko in the episode with Natu, and Natu brought this particular object. He captured someone that was connected to Mitzrayim, and that's where Enko said, "Don't do that. If you do that, they're not going to be. It's going to lead Queen Hagam and her forces to find us here," which evidently it did. One of the elements it did. Natu, as we know, revealed his location to the tribal leaders to let it link out and head back to Mitzrayim. But Lanko is in position that if he brings back Natu, he will get the rank of Echo. That's what you got to take away from that. And you got to take away from how he kind of decided or figured out this and that, and to the point that Natu had to be somewhat involved, even though it was no traces of him or nothing being said that he was present when King Milan came on the scene and took care of Echo in their cave, in their hideout down on the West Bank there. And so Lanko nodded, and he did what he was told and got it done. So that was a full short story right there. But you got the notion that he knew that he had to follow through and to capture Natu. Okay, I'm just gonna put it out there. He got to find Natu, and he got to find exactly if in fact that Echo, what's going on with Echo. Did he actually survive? Did he didn't? And see, I'm kind of giving that to you, but I kind of left it in previous episodes of my podcast. He's off the scene. Okay, but that was the order that Hanee wanted Lanko to return back to Tamat and send that message to the northern mountains. Now, in my previous episodes in season 1, I never really brought up the northern part of the Sudan. It was always the rest, or the south and the Congo, right? Or maybe the southern east near Egypt and places like that. I never really. So this is a new area. This is some new territory to look at. And so that was episode 30. So it was a very good episode, my first episode, I think, because it opens up, it gives you an idea. You're going to know more about the Orions and how they continue to be a thorn in Mitzrayim to constantly cause conflict. They're after something. And a clue of that is I mentioned that in my previous episode in season 1, which is episode 28. Many aspire for their star of Mitzrayim. They give you a clue of what they're actually after or what they want. Let's go ahead and move on to the next episode. I really like this one too. This was released on September the 10th, episode 31. It was entitled, "In the Sudan, Many Secrets Run Deep to the Afar of Old." This would be some extra director clip notes for episode 31. Another thing I want to share with you about 3 points that I want to make sure that I give some highlight on and for you to take note. The first thing is the temple knowledge of 50. I mentioned that the first time in episode 31 where you have Tahib meeting Rulin on the behalf of Queen Hagar, that she's following the order of the crown, King Milan. So both of them asked Tahib to go see Rulin. And in describing Elder Tahib, I call him Grandfather Tahib in the book, Mitzrayim. In the podcast, I mentioned he's an elder. He's part of, the mystery school of thought is what I called it in the book, during Princess Amina time. That's her timeline, Mitzrayim, the book, right? And the podcast, of course, this is before the time of her. And I do mention Mystery School of Thought here and there when I started the podcast, but most of the time when I'm talking about Tahib, I'm really referencing these other sects that are included into the development or into the realm of the Mystery School of Thought. Now, in the history of Egypt, it's always been known of the knowledge that they had beyond man capacity, like beyond this particular world. And so when I'm talking about the temporal knowledge of 50, that's where you need to keep note of. That's where I'm making this a highlight when I'm talking about this particular episode, because it will come up again. I feel it, and I will expand on that. And when I describe like the advisors that they had, Tahib comes from a particular realm of time where he's definitely have a lot of knowledge from the land that we call Sumna, that developed the culture and the knowledge that became Mitzrayim and then later brought into the name of Egypt. Okay, and Mitzrayim and Kemet, which is pretty much one and the same. And so I just want you to take note of that, the temporal knowledge of 50. You will find out more about them and about their mission, their procedure, their process, and the imprint that they had on culture and the development of the particular those that were chosen to get the knowledge, pretty much. So I just want to kind of highlight that I did mention that, and if you didn't get to catch that, to take note, because it will be coming back up sometime probably in this season or beyond. I would not be able to bring that much up in when we get to the stage play, when I do my Prestige Return to stage play, because then it's coming from the book and I only reference the Mystery School of Thought. That was that particular level of knowledge. And I just want to kind of highlight that. He will be in the stage play. He never made it into any of my websodes or the initial stage plays that I did as well. It was only focusing on the 5. He was the one that was asked to be the one to teach Princess Amina and Nahar. Remember, Nahar is the son of Ezra, the high herbalist scientist of Mitzrayim. The second thing I want to highlight in that episode of 31 is that I described the particular scene in the sense that they're underground, as if they're going into some type of mountain, a tunnel. And I called it the Tunnel of Halun. Take a note of that, Halun, because that will come up. I felt it when I wrote it as well. And the part where Tahib, they came together and saw Rulin, and they saw one another, and they walked side by side into another entrance, just the two of them, that led them to a scene. And hopefully you could visualize. It was beautiful how I saw it in my mind when I wrote it, where they could see the Nile River coming from the north of Egypt, and that how it travels, and it parted ways to mix in, to merge with other rivers below. They were able to talk, knowing that in that seclusion they could say what they need to say, but you still felt some trust. Could Tahib trust Rulin, and could Rulin trust Tahib to really express what he was going through? But keep a note of that area. It's basically those mines, base of the mine, into they can lead to under tunnels, because Zimbabwe back in ancient times was known for the minings, or at least in that area, that contribute to a lot of mining of different valuable materials. Okay, so keep a note of that. The tunnels of Halun. That will definitely come up again. I know it will. The third thing is I described how Tahib saw Rulin. And I described that the last time was with Tahib and Kamrat Tata. Elder Tahib was with Kamrat Tata when he met Rulin. So this is what I want you to take a note of. Back in season 1 for episode 26, Queen Hagar remembers moments of before. Okay, it was released. It was May the 7th, 2018, episode 26. Queen Hagar remembers moments of before. Take a note of that, because that's when Queen Hagar went to go see Rulin. And to me, that was the time, right, definitely before the war. And she didn't tell King Milan then, but she wanted to go talk to Rulin. She was with General Tukan. You don't really know the roots and the background of Tukan. You don't know what happened to General Tukan, because fast forward in my episode 1 of season 1, right? That time it was only Kamrat Tata. He kind of rose up in rank, and they didn't seem to have a general. So something happened to General Tukan during the war. But in this episode 26 is where we first meet Rulin, and it was with General Tukan. Now, fast forward to episode 31 is where I mentioned that Tahib saw Rulin, and it was Aspir ago when he, somehow I put it that way, it was Apsu ago when he last saw Rulin, but Tahib was with Kamrat Tata to go see Rulin. So that had to be, I would assume, after that meeting, after that moment that I talked about in episode 26, when Queen Hagar went to go see Rulin with General Tukan. So it was after that moment. Things happened. It was leading up to the war. Perhaps King Milan asked Tahib and Kamrat Tata to go see. So General Tukan could be still around. I'm not sure. We don't know. The reason I'm pointing this out is to take note of it, because the pieces will eventually come to fold to put that together. Rulin is a key for this war. He knows something. That's why Queen Hagar went to go see him. Fast forward, it seemed like Tahib went to go see Rulin too. I just have a feeling that it was after Queen Hagar did, maybe some time later, months or whatever, maybe a year later. We don't know how long from that moment of episode 26 of that memory to go see Rulin, Queen Hagar, and General Tukan, but we know it's going to be soon, maybe a year later, maybe 2 years later, because it didn't see it at that time that she was pregnant at that time. So it was in the past. And so I just want to kind of take note of that. So now we know that Kamrat Tata know Rulin, and there's something about him and his roots that's going to tie some of these issues together of what's really brewing. This is the takeaway that is coming through last season and this season. What is the Astar of Mitzrayim? And that's probably going a little bit further, but I wanted to kind of highlight those 3 things and a recap of that. The temple knowledge of 50. That ties to Tahib. It ties to the ancient mystery school of thought. They had schools in Egypt. They was embedded in the pyramids. They was embedded in those secret entrances and those sections of that location of the deep knowledge from beyond. And the second thing was the tunnel of Halun, which is basically deep into the mines, into the mountains or what have you, in ancient times where they said where the mining took place, right? That was tied to King Damar, which King Damar is key in the book, and he will be a very important character when we return back to stage. So remember that particular location. That's going to come up in the podcast, the tunnel of Halun, where Tahib went to go see Rulin. And Kamrat Tata being mentioned. So there, Kamrat Tata was already on the scene getting a special assignment to travel with Tahib. And the question is, where was General Tukan? And to clarify and to understand, it had to be right before the actual war broke out, or maybe right after it did, because that's what Tahib said, meaning Apsu. When I'm talking about Apsu, mainly I'm either talking about days, or I'm talking about months, or I'm talking about years. But you kind of gotta put the pieces together to figure out which. In that moment, I can share with you, it definitely seemed definitely not days, but it seemed like at least close to a year since they seen one another. When he mentioned that was the last time that he saw Rulin with Kamrat Tata, and it was before Kamrat Tata became a general, which that's an episode in season 1 when a general is born. say that I really enjoy these titles. They come through and they just, I've been like, this in itself can be a movie, but nevertheless, the title of a movie. But to focus on this one, now this one is good too. I love the opening scene that I did when I listened to the final edit, because this brings back to where Queen Hagar received a message, and going forward, it was communicated, and King Milan approved to send Tahib, which is the father of Queen Hagar. In the book, we call him Grandfather Tahib. In my book, Mitzrayim. In these stories, in the stage play, we would turn back, we would be calling him Elder Tahib. And he was sent. See, that's the takeaway. Why was he sent? Well, he was sent because his history is deep. And not only that, but his knowledge and his whereabouts of before, and to protect King Milan and Queen Hagar, because he also know Rulin still have feelings for his daughter, and to focus on who was the upbringing, what's going on in that sense of other secrecy that could harm Mitzrayim. And so he goes see Rulin, and this is where, from the first time that we introduced to Rulin in episode 26, titled Queen Hagar Remembers Moments of Before, we are first introduced to Rulin, and this is where Rulin comes back into the storyline of my podcast timeline, and he's dressed in a military attire. So I think that was maybe his, I don't know, not really hideaway, but his time, his, like, some people have different homes over here and a home over there, and we really didn't know his rank. We just knew that he had history, and he knew it was close to what was brewing up against in the south towards Mitzrayim. And Tahib goes see Rulin, and they're in this almost, I wouldn't say cave or mountain, maybe. I think I describe it as a mountain, and he's dressed in his military attire, and he has guards. So now we know that he has definitely rank, okay, in that region. And they do a kind of like, not really ceremonial or a kind of process to know how things are done when you meet in secret for no one else to know, and the procedural way, because they didn't say anything, and Tahib, they just motioned so then only them to walk together side by side, because Tahib was there with 25 Mitzrayim guards, okay, and his trusted mystery school of thought, as you could say, advisors of the temple of knowledge. That's what I call them. Tahib trusted advisors that I'm calling the Temple of Knowledge of 50. Okay, that was his also additional group of support there with him, as well as 25 Mitzrayim guards, and they was wearing the long white robe and so forth, trimmed with linen gold, as I mentioned. And Tahib was in his status position of an elder of old of them from Samnah, and he was there to meet Rulin. And so basically he was there to get information. Why you sent this message to the queen and to the king and queen of Mitzrayim, primarily to Queen Hagar. He wanted to see her again, and of course, the arrangement was Tahib was to go into place. And Tahib spoke, not looking at Rulin, when they was walking together side by side, and they enter another part of the mountain. And I described it as if it came to me as seeing a waterfall coming inside of a mountain, and they're just talking, but they're not looking at one another. So you have this level of secrecy and of authority, and a procedural way of how you're sharing information or giving information. And Tahib spoke first. He said to Rulin, "The queen, my daughter, sent me to speak on the behalf of the crown." Okay, and Rulin was smiling back by looking at Tahib, still trying to find more about what's going on with Hagar, saying, "Well, is she? Where is she? Like, how she's doing?" That's what we were saying in today's time frame. And Tahib was smiling, not amused. Okay, speak of what you seek. So Rulin has some information, because back in episode 26, where it's in Queen Hagar Remember Moments of Before, in that episode, he said the secrets run deep. They ain't lying when they in the mountains. Okay, some part in the mountains deeper now in the hidden space right there, giving information without anyone to notice or to send out to other areas that you don't want to know. So in that regard, Rulin focused back, and he nodded as I described, and he just said, "There is another that awaits in the mountains." And I keep saying about the mountains. I talked about the north of the mountains, the Hanee of the Orion of the High Cancer Member in their domain, sent Lanko to deliver the message to someone in the northern part, not the southern part, because season 1 it was all about the south of the Sudan, it was about the west, some on the east, but not the north. And now you hear it again, where Rulin is telling Tahib, there is another that awaits in the mountains, not Now, he did say, I'll take it back. He said the mountains, but he did mention something about not in the north, but the south, with good tidings to pursue Mitzrayim. So when you look at all of that in a nutshell, you see as if there's a movement in the north caused by the south. That's why he said there's another that awaits in the mountains. And he mentioned the location. So it's still brewing in the south. Right? Tahib responded back, you got to get this. He said, we know of the disturbance from the west, and the south has always been a far of reasoning. Who are amongst those that do go against King Milan? Bam. Tahib put it there. So they're familiar and they know about the south. It's always upbringing. It's always something, okay, that they got to deal with and to wrangle with. And then the rest that they noticed that it was movement there. And that's what Natu was, because that's where Natu was in the early episodes of season 1, where he found someone. It was a tribal leader that confided in Natu and shared with him about someone that was discovered. It was a Mitzrayim, and that's where he thought he was going to get his power back. I'm talking about Natu now. And Natu went to Echo, and then Lanko was there in their domain, in their cave, and talked about we can use this to a way to break through and to take command of Mitzrayim and get the star of Mitzrayim. But Echo shot that down along with Lanko. So here you have Tahib already talking it. We know there's some disturbance, okay? So the reason why I just broke off and talked about Natu and how there's somebody that he had captured somebody, or that particular tribal leader, they found someone that was a Mitzrayim. We don't know who that is right now. And Natu was able to take this person, whoever this person is at the moment. We don't know what happened, right? I didn't reveal that yet. And that sets up the tone of the West is still brewing and being influenced by the Orions. And going forward, Echo didn't want no part of it. So we still don't know what's going on with Natu with that. But just to show you, the rest is kind of brewing up. And Natu that's where his area at. And then fast forward, you see now in season 2, Natu is making his domain, his command center in the south, which still ties to the rest, okay? And so moving from that, you see Rulin had responded back to Tahib, where they're talking about these pockets of where in the Sudan, and Rulin said the routes are unclear, but another Orion is in the midst against Milan. It's as if Natu has ties in the west and he moved to the south. So that's why Rulin said there's another that awaits. Now, I'm kind of giving it to you that it seems like it's going to be Natu. There's going to be this another awaits. So as if Rulin knows about Echo fall from King Milan. Okay, he found out about it, and now even though they not Echo out, it's somebody else that's been brewing that needs to be known. And that's basically what I think you should take away from that when he said roots are unclear, but another Orion is in the midst against Milan. That's what Rulin said to Tahib, all right, Elder Tahib, and they seek an alliance from the southern tribal leaders. See, because Natu on the west, like I said, was seeing, I guess, just to kind of talk to the different tribal leaders and get to hold. And it was 18. It was published on January the 1st, and I'm talking about that. In a moment, a new path is revealed, and it's supporting the Orion. It supported Natu, and he discovered this Mitzrayim. So he already had ties in the west, and that's what you got to get from that line from Rulin. He says the routes are unclear, but another Orion is in the midst against Milan. They seek an alliance from the southern tribal leaders. Okay, so he bring up da-da-da. So Tahib asks, you speak of who? Something like that. And Tahib basically want to know, Rulin, are you going to side with the Orion? Are you gonna side with us, or you're not doing it because you just don't like Milan, because Milan ended up capturing Crane Hagar heart? Okay, what's the deal? So Rulin just resisted all of that. He just said, in time, all changes from where one stood. And that's important. That's a really good deep statement, because it's basically saying what happened before, can change from the now to the future, and people change. So that's basically how you put it. I'm not sure I'm gonna help be a secret spy for King Milan. That's basically what he was saying. So overall, that was a very good scene. That was the full short story, and it was very nice, especially at the end where you hear Rulin and he kind of make a decision. you need to think about your your loyalty to the history of Mitzrayim, to the history of your people, how we can work together. But it's up to you, Reuel. And Reuel was still struggling with his heart and his duty. And so pretty much Reuel said to his guards, he said, we leave at dawn to meet the Orion that speak of an alliance. And I ended there. So we don't know which alliance that could be. I kind of hinted it might be Natu, who it could be Lanko. Who knows? You got to tune in to find out. But that was that episode 31. It was a very good episode. I highly encourage you to check it out. And if you like it, share it. Thank you so much for joining me this week for my director clip notes, where I'm on track on season 2 to deliver these once a month. It might be 2 times a month, depending on the flow of what's coming out and how many weeks are in that month. But thank you again. Please consider to be a Patron member. Please forward this or share this with someone. And join our MOLIAE YouTube channel, as well as like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter. Thank you so much.